Good afternoon, y'all. How are you doing? Good to see you. I'm, of course, Joaquin Castro, very proud to represent my hometown, which is San Antonio, the 50 South-Southeast County. It's good to be here, and thank you, Chairman Hatch. Thank you for you and your wife opening your home to all of us, and for having me. Thank you so much. To County Judge Becerra, congratulations, especially on your breakthrough in 2018, helping to turn this county blue, which is now, I believe, very solidly Democratic. I wanted to come today, most of all, to say thank you. Thank you for all of the years past and all the work that you've done, the commissioners, the elected officials, the precinct chairs, the volunteers, the students, everybody who's helped organize to make sure that this county is democratic, but also that our state moves in the right direction as well. I wanted to say thank you so much. At a time in our country when I think that folks are feeling a lot of anxiety, oftentimes nervous and fearful, I would say this, y'all, because people have asked me in the last 5 months whether their calls to elected officials matter, whether it matters whether they send an email or show up at a town hall or maybe go to a march. And I want you to know, as somebody who serves in the House of Representatives, in the legislative chamber, I'm in my 23rd year of public service, 10 of them in the state legislature, in my 13th year now. I can tell you that it makes a difference, that your voice still matters even right now. Even when it seems like the battle is uphill, your voice is still making a difference, that you still can change the direction of public policy. And I know folks have wondered about that because in Congress, for example, we have something that's making its way through the process right now called the Reconciliation Bill, which Republicans named a big, beautiful bill, but would be devastating to the United States of America, devastating to this country. I think that we can all agree that we started the year as a nation as the most powerful, most prosperous, most influential nation on earth. And that didn't happen by chance. That took generations to build. It took generations to make this place, this country, a place of opportunity, and make sure that every single one of us, no matter who we are, where we come from, our background, that all of us have access to what I call that infrastructure of opportunity. But yet, right now, that's under threat. Our democracy, quite frankly, is under threat. Certain parts of our freedoms are under threat, and civil liberties and civil rights. So we have to make sure that we beat back this bill. Republicans only won by one vote in this last round, 215 to 214. Unfortunately, one of the representatives for this area, Chip Roy, I thought might initially vote against it, but voted for it. I hope that Chip and others will change their minds because it's going to be devastating for the country. And besides being here to say thank you, because this is so imperative for all of us, I wanted to ask you for one more favor. I wanted to ask you all, because people wonder, well, what else can I do? You know, I call people, I email them, I go on social media and I write on their pages and I tell them what I think about them. Please do this in the weeks that we have. Please share your own stories about how what's in that bill would be devastating, whether it's on education, on healthcare, whatever it is. And in the few minutes that I have, I wanted to share with you a quick reason why I know exactly what's at stake when we talk about cutting healthcare for millions and millions of Americans. Bear in mind, y'all, we live in a wonderful state, but our leaders don't match the incredible people of this state. Texas is one of the few states now that never expanded Medicaid to millions of Texans that would have benefited from it. And this bill would make it worse. It would cut Medicaid for millions of people. It would cut ACA subsidies to millions of people throughout the country. In all, there would be about 14 million people who, one way or another, because of this legislation, would likely lose health care coverage. And so let me tell you a story about why I know what that means. A few years ago, I was in Spain because I was co-chairing a conference for work. I was co-chairing the U.S. Spain conference, and we were outside of Bilbao, Spain on the last night of this conference, and it was somewhere around 11 at night, 11:30, and I was supposed to take a flight back to San Antonio at 7 a.m. the next morning. And so we had this event on the outskirts of town, and I was a passenger in a car going back into the main city of Bilbao. I've never been there before. And it was kind of what seemed to be like a rural road or a semi-rural road because there were no overhead lights. It was very dark. The only thing lighting up the road were the headlights of the cars. And we were going about 65 to 70 miles an hour. And the car that I was riding in hit this wild boar. Those of you that have driven on rural roads and ever hit livestock or any kind of animal, you know what kind of impact that means for a vehicle. And so as you can imagine, the part of the front of the car was crushed in, the windshield was broken, the airbags came out. And in that moment, as I looked around and tried to figure out if I was hurt, I thought that I was fine, actually. I looked and, I didn't feel any incredible pain. I thought the seat belts and the airbags did their job. And the ambulances came, and the ambulances asked me and the others whether we wanted to go to the hospital. And I thought, well, I don't think anything's wrong with me. I think everything turned out fine. But I noticed that my hand was starting to swell up a little bit and get red. And so I thought, well, if I got to make an insurance claim, I better go document that there's an actual problem that I encountered when I was in Spain. And so, let me go to the hospital here for 30 minutes and they'll give me an x-ray and then I'll be on my way and I'll catch my flight back to San Antonio at 7 in the morning. Well, I get to this hospital in what I considered kind of the middle of nowhere in Spain. And when I get there, I said, I don't really feel anything. It's just my hand. And they said, no, listen, we see accidents on this road all the time. And sometimes you don't realize right away the damage that may set on a few hours or a few days later. And so they started treating me like a trauma patient. They put that neck brace on where you can't move your neck, right? And they ran me into the MRI machine. And they gave me something that I had never had before, which is something called an MRI with contrast. Those of you all that have the MRI, the contrast is the dye that allows them to see what's going on internally with your organs. And, they did it very quickly. And the doctor, she said, I think everything's okay. And they started moving me to an area to dismiss me. And one of the last things they do, if not the last thing they do before they let you go, is they take the ID out. So she came back, and I thought that she was going to take the ID out, and she closed the curtain to this. We were in these curtained rooms, they weren't actual rooms. She closed the curtain really gently, and she came over to my bedside, and she was speaking Spanish, and I understand Spanish pretty well, but I never wished that I understood and spoke Spanish better than I did in that very moment. She came over and she said, my radiologist called down to me, and he believes that he sees these 2 neuroendocrine tumors that have moved from your small intestine into your liver. And so this doctor in the middle of nowhere in Spain was diagnosing me with cancer. And so you can imagine, I missed my flight the next morning, but eventually got home and had a million doctor's appointments and tests and everything in San Antonio and then at MD Anderson in Houston. And I ended up getting treatment later that summer and had surgery at MD Anderson in February of 2023 and stayed there for 10 days at MD Anderson. And I had to become an expert in insurance in a way that I had never had to before. I'd never been hospitalized before. I had to come to understand premiums and deductibles and co-pays and what drugs are considered specialty drugs and make sure that they're covered in your plan. And there was one line that stood out to me as I looked through this long item of bills after my surgery. It was for the drug that I have to take every month for these tumors that I still have in my liver. Fortunately, they haven't grown for 3 years, and I just need them to not grow for about 40 more years, and then I'll be okay. There's a line for the drug lanreotide, and the cost of that drug per injection every 28 days that the hospital was charging Blue Cross Blue Shield was about $24,000 per injection. So y'all know, there are times in my life and my family's life, not my family now, my wife Anna and I have 3 kids, but my family growing up, my parents, my brother, there were times that we were uninsured. If I had been struck during one of those times with this diagnosis, our family would have been bankrupt, as many families in this country have experienced over the years. But I pay now about $1,500 a month for insurance for myself and my family, and I'm covered. But y'all know how many of our fellow citizens and our fellow Texans either have no health care coverage
or they're underinsured, so they're paying premiums and co-pays and deductibles that are sky high. And it's likely that a lot of the folks who have the same type of cancer that I do, who are uninsured or who are underinsured, are not getting that shot every month. And so I will never vote to cut people's health care because I know what it means. I know people's lives are at stake. And I hope y'all, and this is not just a Democratic issue either. And I think a lot of the Republicans, they realize that as well. And one reminder of that was when I was at MD Anderson, those of you that have ever had surgery, I had this like mid-incision surgery, right? They tell you to walk around after the surgery to get back and kind of get back into form. And they told us to take it easy and to try to relax and everything. And so I actually did not turn on the TV almost at all for 10 days. Didn't watch anything for 10 days, trying to stay stress-free. But I was walking around, you know, you're walking around with that, they hook you up, they put 2 IVs in you, they hook you up to the machine, and you're walking around like this with the machine very slowly because you got the incision. And I'm doing these labs, and other people are doing labs as well that have similar surgeries, even if it maybe was a different cancer. But I passed 2 rooms in a row, and I noticed that Fox News is blaring from the television sets of both rooms. And I thought, wait, I thought they told us to relax. But it was a reminder that it's not like it's all liberal Democrats who are relying on having health care coverage to make sure that they're okay and they get the treatment they need. It's all of us as Americans and as Texans. And so when we stand up and fight to make sure that people have these coverages, we're standing up to fight for everyone, regardless of their politics. So thank you all so much for what you're doing. Thank you for staying in the fight. Please share your stories and let people know how this is affecting you as well. And may God bless you in all of your work. Thank you all so much.
As she asked if I was going to run for Senate, honestly, I've been looking at a few of the statewide races. There are different folks interested in different races. My dream is for us to put together a top flight ticket to take out Greg Abbott, to take out, I think it'll be Ken Paxton and not John Sawyer. Ken Paxton to replace Dan Patrick to win that open attorney general seat. So there's several of us in discussion right now. And so hopefully we'll have some news for you here in the coming weeks.
Yay! I'm back.
Well, I think the question is whether the cuts will affect rural counties even more than the urban counties. And I believe that the answer is yes. I saw a very, startling, maybe I shouldn't be startled or shocked, right? Because of the government that we've had over the years in Texas here, the last generation. But it said that since 2005, more than 100, I think about 120 hospitals in Texas have closed. And a large percentage of those have been in rural Texas. So these cuts to Medicaid and the cuts to the Affordable Care Act premiums, they're going to make sure that more of those rural hospitals end up closing. This is essentially what I think is an urbanization plan, or it's a path towards accelerated urbanization, because the infrastructure for rural life is going to continue to decline because of what they're doing. So yeah, absolutely. And unlike a lot of the large urban hospitals, you have a smaller tax base, and you also don't have the same private philanthropy that you do in Dallas or Houston or even San Antonio. And so it makes it tougher then to sustain the institutions. So yeah, I think this should absolutely be seen as decimating not just rural hospitals, but rural life, right there.
Congressman over here.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes, sir.
Congressman, in the one big beautiful bill, we hear these headlines and you're talking about them, they're extremely important. What are some of the smaller things that people haven't heard about that are buried in there, like making the president uncoverable by the courts and decisions by the courts, and those kinds of things. And how can we encourage our elected officials to vote against these?
Yeah, in fact, let me deal with that one first, because there was a town hall recently, you might have seen the clips on television, where one of the senior members of the Republican
party in Congress didn't realize that there was this provision in the bill that basically tells the courts, hey, the courts, you all can't use any money appropriated in this bill for any kind of contempt enforcement. So in other words, if the Trump administration, President Trump, or the Department of Justice, or anybody else is violating a court order, the courts cannot do anything that invokes money or uses money that's being appropriated from the federal government in this legislation to enforce their court order. So you all know what they're doing here. They're trying to usurp and take away the power of the judicial branch, which is a co-equal branch of government, to enforce anything having to do with the president or the entire executive branch. Y'all, I can't overstate how dangerous this is. Literally how dangerous it is for this country, for our country. We wouldn't want any president, no matter the administration, no matter their politics, to have that power. To say that the courts are essentially useless and invalidate their ability to enforce their court orders. That's what they're trying to do with this bill. And let me explain real quick where we are in the process, because I know that, you know, in my family and my friends, they get confused because you see these headlines about the House just voted to do this, or the Senate just voted to do this, and I sometimes wonder, wait, when is the final vote? When does this thing actually become enacted, right? Like I keep reading that they voted for it, but it's not law yet, right? So when you do budget reconciliation is essentially a way to only have to be able to do budget work with only 50 votes to get around the filibuster in the Senate. But you've got to pass a budget resolution first. That means it was 2 votes in the House and 2 votes in the Senate. They did that already. This last thing that you heard about was the third vote. The third and the fourth votes will be on the actual line items, the line items themselves, on where money is going, policies, etc. So the House, that was the last vote. That was the third vote. The Senate is going to do its third vote. Now, the reason you need a fourth vote is because those are going to be different versions of the bill. And they got to come together on, those of you that didn't work in the legislature, you remember a conference bill where the Senate and the House have to agree on a final version. They both have to vote on that final version. That will be the fourth vote for each chamber, right? So the House has already passed their third vote. They won by 1 vote. The second vote, they won by 2 votes. So we're getting closer. All we need now, if they tie, the vote doesn't pass, the bill doesn't pass, okay? So that's why the remaining pressure matters. We can't surrender. One more thing I would point out really quick is, in this bill as well, you all know that Greg Abbott and the Republican legislature just passed a voucher bill that I believe is going to decimate many public schools. It's going to decimate the athletics and the academics in many public schools, particularly in rural areas. And especially in areas where you don't have a convenient private school that folks can go to. Well, there's a federal version of a voucher bill that's also part of this piece of legislation. So essentially, Texas public schools are going to get hit twice at the same time. With the federal voucher bill and the state voucher bill, all at the same time. And you already see shortfalls in public school funding right now. School boards are announcing that they're facing shortfalls. So that's what's at stake, and that's why we have just a few weeks, maybe a little bit over a month, but a few weeks to continue to push back on this stuff.
Last question.
Yes.
Thank you for all of this, and thank you for all of your work. In recent times, I've been writing lots of letters, making lots of calls, and lots of rallies. But all of the letters that I submit electronically, I get a form letter back saying, "Oh, thanks for contacting me, I'm happy to represent you, this and that, and if you're interested in the flag, get in touch with me." How can I write a letter that I know my representatives are going to read or fill?
I just got asked this question yesterday. When I started out in 2003 in the legislature, y'all remember this was before Facebook, but there was no social media at all, right? Back then, I used to tell people, email your representative directly because most members of the legislature at the time were checking their email. Now, I would say, go onto their social media pages, whether it's X or Facebook or Instagram, and comment. Even though you may not get a response, unlike sending in a letter, right? most representatives, most still check their social media and the comments that are coming in and everything. When you make the calls, they're useful, but a lot of the interns will answer the calls, or the staff will answer the calls, the staff will respond to the letters. I get a breakdown, because we get so many things that come in, I get a breakdown every week of the issues that people wrote in about and the positions they're asking me to take. So kind of the metadata, basically, about what people are writing about. But I know that people personally will read a lot of the comments that are put out on social media. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And they'll get a sentiment. And especially if you say, hey, I live in your district, right? And if you use a real name, that's especially good, because there's so much anonymity on the internet, right? Like now I get so many, well, first of all, I get called so many names per day on social media by the hard right. But also a lot of them are anonymous. So when you actually say, hey, this is who I am and I live in your district, it does leave an impression and it makes a difference. Yeah.
All right, Don Ashby, last question.
Mine's a two-parter.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
Thank you, Chair, for all your work.
Here. When I was a lobbyist for TSGA, all our legislators would tell the teachers to call us, because every call is logged in. Even if somebody doesn't answer, it goes into the voicemail. And so that's what I tell people to do, because at least your voice is on there and your opinion does count. But my other question was, where in the heck is the Department of Education? Is it dead in the water? Who is that Yahoo that's running it? And do we have a chance to reinstate it?
Thank you, Donna.
There is now more than 230 ongoing lawsuits against the executive actions of the Trump administration. And the Department of Education is one of those lawsuits. And I suspect that the litigation will continue for a while. Obviously we want to stand up and fight back right now, but I'm also starting to think about what does life look like after this chapter in American politics? There's a lot of damage that's being done. How are we going to build back after this damage is done and there's no longer a President Trump in office? And so to answer your question directly, it's still tied up in litigation. I hope that the courts will block him from just doing away with the Department of Education because of what's at stake. But also I think we need to think about what does it look like when we actually come back? What are we going to do with that department and how do we build it back up? All right, y'all. Thank you so much for having me.